没有走完的路不会是终点，故事的走向是自己选择的坚持。
这个故事的开头还算不错，相信过程，相信自己走过的路。
那些最激动人心的冒险，从来不是单枪匹马的挑战。
과거는 잊으세요. 내일이 새로운 시작입니다. 내 경기가 새로운 도전입니다.
我们愿意为胜利付出许多代价，改变只是其中之一。
어떤 사람이든 현재에 만족하지 않고 어떠한 사람이든 제자리 걸음을 하지 않는다.
过去的荣耀就存留在记忆中，这一抹红色要照亮未来。
为之付出的心血越多，收获的果实才越甘甜。
赛场上的事怎能尽如人意？我只想追求无愧于心。
保持微笑，胜利总会专顾你。
在尝过赢得一切的滋味之后，你绝对不会甘心做第二名。
尖矛和利刃是勇者的武器，也有最坚硬的盾和扬起风帆的大旗。
如果翻不过这座山， 他们就听不到你的故事。
这个故事的结局将由我们来谱写。为了无悔，为了胜利，为了站在世界这边。
Hello and welcome to week 1, day 6, the very last day of our first week of LPL action here in summer. And you know it's going to be a long one, another 10 weeks of grueling action in the regular season, followed up by playoffs and followed up by, of course, Worlds following that one as well. And before all that happens, we'll have Rift Hours coming your way as well. So lots of action to come your way all over this split. And the teams, of course, you got to just relax just a little bit because there is a lot to come for these guys. And that, of course, just means chilling out on your phone, chilling out with Clearlove as well, who will be taken to the stage later today, and of course they will be taking on FunPlus Phoenix as well to kick us off. And while FunPlus Phoenix may have not had the best performance in their first game in the LPL, I'm sure that they'll have a good time later on. Just watching Cool do up his new hairdo. I saw him sporting the old man bun there. Not sure if I'm particularly a fan, but hopefully it improves today. My name is Richard Polscow. I'm going to be along by Clement Chu. How are you doing today, Clement?
Hey man, Cool's still a good-looking person, and I was surprised you weren't more excited about Clearlove coming back. You know the chat, Twitch chat, get your 7s ready, we're going in on it.
Hey, you've got to like downplay it just a little bit, and then when he eventually hits the stage, that's when it's going to actually explode, because you know the audience behind is absolutely packed, because Clear is going to be here as well later today. But for sure, there's going to be a lot of action happening today, but we need to take a look at the standings and see how the league has been shaping up so far, because there has been absolutely a couple upsets happening so far. See at the top of the table, nothing really too confusing. Got Rogue Warriors up there, you've got EDG as well in the Eastern Conference, but then Clement, what's happening in the rest of the board? You can see that WE 0-1, what happened there?
The big thing is TOP taking down WE. Now TOP only won 3 series in the last split, but they're getting off to a good start. And WE are playing today. Can they gel with Condi back on the roster is the big question.
Oh yeah, it is a big question. However, I will say that the curse is continuing. If you play in your studio for the first time, you're gonna lose. And I know that later
just
today,
an LPL thing.
Just an LPL thing, and we have RNG and JG Gaming actually going toe-to-toe later today. So one of those teams has to lose, but we'll obviously get into that more later today. But we do need to take a look at the schedule. So I've already spoiled it, I've already told you the final game, but we'll be kicking off the day with Edward Gaming taking on FunPlus Phoenix. I'll be followed by WE and Snake, and then of course we'll end the day with RNG and JD Gaming.
And our matchup of the week will be WE versus Snake, the traditional team versus the non-traditional team. Still running an AD carry for WE, but Snake going for quadra banners and a support in the mid lane. Actually, double support. So a lot of interesting things to see that clash of styles.
Oh yeah, a lot of innovation going on in the LPL, Clement, and it just doesn't really stop, does it? I mean, it would just keep on coming your way. But if you want to know more about the LPL as well, there's lots of articles being written. I know a certain person next to me as well has been putting those up there, talking about Mako. You got anything to add there, Clement?
Well, Mako is the mastermind. He's the best shot caller in the LPL, and to find out exactly why, you can read the article.
Exactly. Find more about it over at LOL Esports. You can check that one out. And also, we need to talk about an event happening in just a couple of weeks from now, always at the end of week 1, which means that Rift Rivals just 3 weeks away. And just as a refresher for the teams actually going to that event, because I know it's been a while since the spring split, coming out of the Eastern Conference, we actually have RW, a team that you need to get well acquainted with very quickly. They're going to be joined as well by RNG and Invictus Gaming. So we didn't manage to see them last time around because they unfortunately didn't make it out of the spring split. But you'll get to see them over in Rift Rivals. So that will be very interesting in just a couple of weeks, Clement.
Yeah, definitely. LPL hyping themselves up for the region, and it is happening on our home turf in Dalian.
Yep, and we already know even if it's not on our home turf, we'll still win things. So now it's on our home turf. I think there's absolutely no chance. You know, I feel like that's a fair thing to say. But let's go ahead and talk about our first matchup of the day. It is FPX taking on EDG. Now, on one side, I feel like FPX maybe haven't gone all together yet. I know some teams have been more adaptive than others. I know Snake is definitely one of them. But on the opposite side, you have EDG, a team very much with their style together, Clement.
And I think people need to be acquainted with what they do and what has made them so successful so far. We classify them as a mid-game tempo team. And this means in the ban pick, they don't really pick for counter picks, and they don't pick for the late game 5v5. What they're looking for is a winning bot lane that they can siege with and global abilities. And what those two things do is that they help set up tempo. They're always the first to set up a team fight on the map. They set up these traps at objectives, and they ask you to walk into them. That's what they're best at, and that usually does happen in terms of the mid-game style right there. And a big thing about them is that they do play with their global abilities incredibly well. You talk about Scout, his best champion is the Talia. You talk about Mako, his best champion are the Tomcatch and the Shen support. So this is a very dynamic team, a very fast-paced team.
They are, for sure. You're just talking about the T. I'm not sure if he's going to get his hands on that one nowadays, considering he's banned all the time, and also junglers are going to be coming after that one as well. But it's also about how they set up for those team fights, right? You're talking about how they set up for tempo and momentum, but when they actually set up correctly, sparks will fly in game.
Yep, and you can see this right here. EDG had their own bush named after them. That pixel brush is known as the EDG Death Brush in the LPL. That's where they get the majority of their kills. They do like to set up around this place, force you to walk into them, and you could just see Scout's Talia right there cutting out the reinforcements coming out from Rogue Warriors. This is the strategy that helped them win over Rogue Warriors in the semifinals.
Yeah, absolutely no escape from them, but we've got to take a look at their opponents as well today. It will be FPX, and as we were just saying, doesn't feel like they've got all of their style together just yet, being 0-1 on the week, but FPX, they do have some good things going for them. We actually take a look at the alliance, and we're going to jump back to EDG for a second. Bray in the top playing Clearlove in the jungle. It's Clearlove, raise your sevens, and Scout in the mid lane with, of course, iBoy and Maker rounding out the bottom lane. On the opposite side, it will be Gimgoon, Shinyi, Cool, LWX, and Crisp, the guy that we really have to talk about, Clement.
Yep, Crisp is the FPX new star behind Cool. They're pushing him as this really hyper-aggressive and very gifted mechanical player. We've seen his performance on the first set. He was very good on the Alistar, and the team trusted him enough to give both of their blue side first picks over to that champion.
And do you feel like this is the thing that will benefit FPX in the long run? Because, Clement, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like if FPX stayed exactly the way that they were at the end of the spring split, they may actually have done better in this current split, being hyper-aggressive, hyper just in your face. And now they've actually taken more of a reserved style. So it seems like they've gone back on what they need right now in this meta.
And we do have to talk about the person you're making this claim on. It's basically the change from Pepper, who is hyper-aggressive, really hot-headed, to Shingy, who is someone that Raz says is going to be a more controlled style so far. And even though I do agree that Pepper is the better mechanical jungler, I do think Shingy is the right choice going forward for FPX. They do have a lot of hot heads, and if you look at how they lost their first series, it wasn't because they did fight well, it was because they were going for fights too early on, actually. So I do hope Shingy's control will maturize this team, and we can finally see how they close out games, because that's something they've been lacking.
I'm just saying, it's a sad, sad day when you see Gimgoon in the top lane playing Ornn, and that's his first choice. You know, something has gone wrong. So I want to actually see him actually bring some fire back to the table. We're about to send it to the casters, but before we go, we're going to hear from iBoy, of course, talking about trash talk.
我们的目标的话，我们队伍整体目标肯定是要以冠军为目标的。然后我个人的目标，我觉得上次春季赛总决赛，感觉我的垃圾话说的太逊了。 感觉不是很那个，然后希望这次进入夏季赛之后，夏季赛总决赛还能再说一次垃圾话。
iBoy with the retrospective saying, you know what, we had some trash talk last split. It wasn't good enough. But hey, he might get the chance to earn some more trash talk later on if EDG actually get to see success. And they are off to the right foot. They're bringing Clear Love out of the gates in game number 1, set number 1, whereas they waited until towards the end of the split previously. This is going to be hype as heck. You can see the fans are already in the arena, and Edward Gaming seems like they know they didn't go to MSI. They know they weren't the best team in spring. They're already taking steps to rectify that.
Yeah, it's interesting to see a team that got so far. Remember EDG, a machine, a juggernaut of the LPL. Getting to the finals is already a big thing, but they have higher expectations for it. iBoy saying that, you know what, it wasn't good enough, right? They need to, he's specifically talking about the trash talk, and I understand that. But just going up against RNG and then losing in that fashion was quite unfortunate for them.
It's almost as if there's a bit of subtext in that. Like, it was good, but it wasn't quite good enough, you know? And now we've got iBoy and Mako making their way back on stage. They're going to be playing against LWX and Crisp today in this matchup against FPX. And we have to talk about this. FPX was the brawler team. They were the chaotic team. They started to find some maturity once they brought Cool towards the second half of the spring split. But now it's 8-11. Now it's the chaos patch. This could be FPX's time to put EDG back down towards the bottom of the standings.
Yeah, and honestly, I would say a big maybe. Usually, I'm the one who takes the first stand on a lot of things. This is a bad change. This is a good change.
Yeah.
For FPX, it's so weird just because, remember, Pepper, their former jungler, was such a strong shot caller for the team along with Crisp. Now that is gone. It could be a good thing just because you're talking about the facilitator. I know that Clement brings it up on the desk. A facilitating jungler of Singy could change how that plays. They can go farther with calmer and cooler heads. But that changes their playstyle. They have a change in coaching staff. So it really comes down to will that benefit them in the long run.
And so much for these teams. We're talking about how the summer split is the opportunity to reset, reboot, and retry to chase down those playoffs, to chase down worlds even beyond that. So we'll see if that's going to be the case for FPX. Of course, their opponents, on the other hand, we're already very familiar with them. Edward Gaming, as we get into this pick and ban for Game 1, perhaps the most well-known organization in all of the LPL, bringing Clear Love in for set number 1. You can see the bans on your screen, and immediate Lucian priority for iBoy. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, two things that I already see. You already mentioned it. Lucian being picked up. Could go to Scout, though there are enough memes that he might not pick it up for himself. Very likely that it's going to go towards iBoy. But also the Talia and Graves. Two very strong carry junglers in the meta, and that could be an immediate test towards Clear Love that wants to play more facilitating junglers. So I wonder if he's willing to pick up the Talia because he's usually the slowest to pick up the carry junglers that are fresh on the patch.
We'll see what that's going to be, as now we've got ourselves Camille and Lulu right away locked in, but Clear Love with the early priority towards Shen. Looking for that paranoia, and Scout's just giving us the good old-fashioned troll in the meanwhile. He actually locks in Rise to follow it up, so EDG, they've got their mindset. We are racing through this pick and ban.
There we go, and I mean, this is what EDG is good at. Picking their duels properly. Strong bottom lane focus with the Lucian pick. And Clear Love on the Nocturne gets towards level 6, and he's going to be focusing Scouts in particular. Early on, focus on that lane because Rune Prison really sets up well for Nocturne ulti. And then as the game expands, when you look towards side lanes, it seems like he's going to be helping out his solo laners in particular once they start looking for 1-3-1s or 1-4s.
Well, now we've got the Yasuo locked in. Last time we saw FPX play against Snake on Friday, that went to LWX. He was playing against the Shen Mordekaiser. We already know about the Shen Nocturne, the Shen Rise. There's so much mobility with that setup. So a very straightforward ban out of FPX to take that away. Alistar going to be banned away from Crisp. That was heavily prioritized by FPX as well in Snake, so it's interesting to see how they've already started to change their strategy, as FPX looks like they're going to continue to try to target away Mako.
And remember, the first game, the first set FPX went and played was up against Snake.
Yeah.
Snake had the shenanigans, and it was Crisp that was the lone player that had a phenomenal set on the Alistar. So his Alistar was excellent, and it really made it so FPX was just putting up a fight in that set. So good to take that away. The Rakan to follow up. Now we're challenging Crisp and what carry champion, or at least what tank that he's willing to pick up for himself.
And we might have just heard Pulse on the desk saying, gosh, I would love to see Kim Gun on a carry or a fighter or a bruiser. Well, we've got another Ornn. Now, we don't know that the Ornn is going to Gimgoon. There is some flexibility as to how this roster shakes out, but he's already played it. We can see how this final set is going to lock in as EDG. Looks like they might be embracing the bruiser meta as well. Well known for their mid-game tempo and control. If they can snowball out of the early game with this composition, it is going to be absolutely terrifying. As Darius is locked in, Braum is the next hover from Mako. Ooh, but that Fiddlestick still looking good.
This is going to be fun. Now, the Darius pick, it's just because they see the Ornn and they recognize it's a strong matchup in the top lane. Yeah. This is the assumption that Ornn's going top rather than support, and I know it can go in a lot of places, but you already seen Gimgoon top side, so it's very likely that's going to be the case. So EDG already focusing on the laning phase. Wonder what the mid lane pickup for FPX is going to be, because remember, Lulu can go support, can go mid lane. Those are the only 2 lanes that I'm looking for with that pick.
It's the same thing with the Yasuo. We've seen Cool take it into the mid lane. We've seen it played by LWX.
Yeah, but Cool is not, historically, he's been the weakest Yasuo that we've had. So he's been working on it, but the confidence, you need the confidence to be able to pick up the Yasuo. He doesn't have it for himself, so it's very likely going to be going to LWX.
Yeah, perhaps taking a page out of Doinby's book with that Cassiopeia performance that we saw just earlier this week out of Rogue Warriors. It was a 2-0 out of Doinby on that champion, so Cool will be looking for a similar setup as he's going up against the Noxian Executioner, the headsman himself, scout on that Darius in the mid lane. Meanwhile, we've got ourselves a Yasuo Rise in that bottom, and it is going to be swapped over.
There we go.
Ooh, the last second swap. There it is. Rise in the mid lane with Darius going top.
All right, that's pretty slick. Remember, it's usually globally 20 seconds in which you got to look at it, but the reason why this is important that the Rise is going into the mid lane is because the 2v2 is what you want to contest if you're EDG going up against FPX. Cassiopeia Camille is so strong level 2 that I do not see a possibility of Scout being able to take it early. So he's going to have to really play on the back foot. They're going to be slight ganking windows once they hit level 6, but for the most part, I like Sydney's chances on the Camille.
Yeah, this is something we also have to talk about for Edward Gaming on the other side. Clearlove stepping up in Game 1 for EDG's Summer Split, not leaving any question as to whether or not he's going to perform as he steps up. Is this dark Clearlove we're going to see, or will this be light Clearlove? Is he going to go for the lanes? Is he going to go for the invades? Is he going to go for the kills? Or will he just sit back and farm and try to rush that level 6 on Nocturne?
That's always the question. I know mentality is always a big thing when it comes to Clearlove. The last time we saw him was at the finals in LPL in Chengdu, and mentality just wasn't in his court. He crumpled when he went up against MLXG.
Yeah.
So he had a lot to prove going into that one since he wasn't the starting jungler for the majority of the split. Having to fall down in that fashion, he definitely wants to be able to come into this debut and come in strong.
Absolutely. He brings so much veteran experience to the roster, and with Mako's exceptional shot calling and the backup, the emotional backbone of Clearlove to fill that out, EDG is definitely a team that we should be keeping our eye on over the course of this split, as they seem to be taking what almost looks like a standard composition, like 8.9 or 8.8, like maybe Fiddlestick support, maybe Darius Nocturne. It's a bit out of left field, but it still follows the standard marksman practices. That said, their opponents, FPX, they have embraced the chaos. Let's see how this works out for them as we load onto the Rift for game number 1 of Edward Gaming versus FunPlus Phoenix. Now we've got ourselves that standard 5v5 lineup. You can hear the crowd already chanting the EDG fighting signs. Still looking as proud as ever, as this is one of the oldest organizations in the LPL right now, and taking on the newcomers of FunPlus Phoenix and trying to show them why they've been in the LPL so long, why EDG has seen so much success. Because again, their motto, prove them wrong with results. They failed to get first place in spring. Well, now it's time to see those results. Prove us wrong. Why did that happen, and can you recover?
Yeah, I mean, EDG has always had high standards for themselves, so going up against a team that's so hungry in FPX, you still have to be as on top of your game as possible.
Yeah.
So FPX are definitely the team to challenge you in the laning phase, so it's going to be a really nice matchup to see if EDG can still come out strong in the early laning phase. Clement talked about how a lot of EDG's game playstyle is based off early laning phase into the mid game. So if they fall early, that's when you really put in questions for this team.
Well, we've got a double red start from both of the junglers and 2 early wards into that bottom side river. You can see Shinyi's trying to rush through and take that very early bottom side Scuttle Crab, even double wards from FPX on that top side river.
Yeah, Camille is the scariest jungler level 2 just because her level 2, once she takes blue buff or red buff, just 1 buff into Scuttle Crab, she is so strong in her game.
Yeah.
Just because hook shot into flash will get most mid laners. So Scout respects it. He doesn't have the wards to protect himself, but he's under tower, so he doesn't need the wards. Bottom lane had placed a wonderful ward, so had they pressed this in the lane, that they would have been able to back up in time. So far, so good coming out of EDG.
We're seeing FPX pushing up in that mid lane, pushing up in that bottom lane. They're trying to control these lanes very early on as LWX actually steps forward, and iBoy eats a big hit from Crisp, as Crisp is looking for the Glitter Lance. Already this wave is pushing in. iBoy hasn't missed too many CS, but here comes the wave, plus constant pressure from FPX to control this bottom half of the map means that that early game pressure that we wanted to see out of EDG could be stemmed a bit.
Yeah, usually you'd look towards the double range matchup and think that they have a proper laning matchup. So far, Crisp is just taking full control of this lane. So it's good that iBoy is attacking him right off the bat.
Oh, that's actually the Ignite, and immediate flash back. iBoy with no chances. He's got the Doran's shield, and he's backing all the way up as the wave crashes in.
Well done from FPX's bottom lane to protect Lulu. Lulu stepped up to double down on the trade. The moment the fear came off from Mako, that's when the skirmish happened. So right now, Crisp and the LWX are doing phenomenally here.
Oh, but that's teleport from iBoy to get back in. And Shinyi is waiting in that tri-bush. Will he take the bait this time? The minion wave is even pushing away.
Yeah, the wave is pretty poor for EDG. Just because of that Q, though, from LWX, that's changed dramatically. So you can just see that Shinyi's moving towards mid lane instead.
Scout's actually on top of the miasma nut right now. Lands the rune prison. Shinyi lands the hook shot, no tactical sweep.
And that's the fear of the matchup. That's the fear of the 2v2 in the mid lane. Sure, Nocturne's not there, but miasma means that it's so hard to get out of that situation because Shinyi's going to be on top of you with hook shot. And then you can't flash out until you completely walked out of there. So had the second Q come through from Shinyi, Scout had to base. So right now he's in a pretty good spot just because he was able to get out of there in time.
And again, we have to bring up Shinyi playing in the LDL in the spring half of the year. Now coming in to play with FPX, previously of Chaogu and Jingdong with Kabe and Doinbi. So he's very familiar to the 2-3-man gank squads. That's the strategy that Jingdong effectively created for themselves that allowed them to see success.
And you know what, Shinyi, a storyline that not a lot of people are going to be able to see for themselves. He has a lot to prove for himself. He has a lot riding on his mentality. Just because even when he went to the LDL, there was poor performances there from the team as well. Triumph and Song Gaming, no one will know them, but they were a team that had high expectations, bringing on major names to the team, and they still couldn't get out of their own group stage. So Shinyi now on FPX, who wants to be able to come out with a strong performance.
Oh, Clearlove actually flashes, lands the fear, a quick cleanse, and Cool is out of there. Summoner Spell traded for Summoner Spell. Already, though, it looks like Clearlove might be chasing down the dark half this time.
Yeah, that's really strong from EDG, just finding that window. Look at this. Wave pushing in towards Scout now. So once Cool comes back into the lane, he has no Summoner Spells as a Cassiopeia. That means Shinyi, he's going to have to lead Cassio back in this lane. So help the push come across. Otherwise, it's a very easy gank coming in from EDG.
Yeah, and we already talked about the importance of vision in this matchup. FPX have got so many wards on the map. They just spotted out Clearlove at that Gromp. They've already got themselves a defensive ward at the Raptor camp, plus another control ward sitting in Shinyi's pocket, and 2 more from LWX and Crisp as they complete their recall.
These are great steps being played from them. Remember, we talked about EDG being an early to mid-game team, and they're losing the early game laning phase. Bottom lane, CS in favor of LWX. Mid lane, the matchup is of course in favor of Cool, but Shinyi providing the pressure means that now he was in a good spot. They just need to double down so he is in a proper place in the wave. Cool did a good job, so now it's going to meet in the middle. That's great from them. But as long as FPX can keep this up, they're in a great spot for this game.
Clement yesterday was talking about how important those early kills are to setting up for the first big team fight, because that first 5v5, the full, when everyone is grouped up and ready to use their big items and try to explode the game open with one massive team fight, just has so much impact on the game. We're seeing a pretty stalled out early game this time around. Maybe we could expect some more roaming ganks and skirmishes as Clearlove just now ticks over to level 6. Maybe we could start to see EDG try to accelerate this a little bit more, but they do have that rise, that Rod of Ages mid laner.
Just take a look at where the wave is right now in the mid lane. It's back in a really poor position for Cool. Cool needs Xinyi, but Xinyi's at his red buff, so he is, as a veteran, rightfully so, playing it safe near his own turret. Because Mako is also making the roam here as well, so this is a really rough spot for Cool, and he needs the help so he doesn't get killed here.
Yeah, red buff taken now by Xinyi. Looks like he's trying to chase down that level 6 as he just ticks over to it by taking the Raptor camp. This is a very large wave.
It's a lose-lose situation for Cool just because, sure, he's making the right call, but in a proper matchup, he wants to be able to take the control here. So sure, he wins out at the end just because his life is all right.
Yeah.
He doesn't get killed in this situation, but that's the 2v2 pressure that he's losing out.
And missing a few minions to the turret. That's going to open up a bit more CS and experience for Scout, as his own blue buff is still standing. But just that constant movement from Clearlove, the slight pressure from Mako, it's finding the correct pressure points of FPX and ever so gently pressing them. You don't want to force a fight that you're not sure you can take, especially with that very strong Camille early on, especially with Yasuo.
It's level 6 here. So this is a really strong gank opportunity for EDG. The window is widening up. Let's go.
There it is. They're going to find the target, and that's LWX under the turret. First blood as they dive it down, and they just rush him down with damage.
That's how strong this composition is at 6. The moment you ping 6 as Mako and Clearlove, they just go right for it. So vision control is key. They lost vision of that bush, and that's the result of it.
Just like that, EDG find themselves first blood that will go to Mako. Tragically, not the Nocturne or the Lucian, but should still certainly help out, get him a little bit closer towards that Zanya's Hourglass rush that Fiddlesticks needs so much, as now Boots of Mobility are completed from Mako off the back of this. So he's looking to take that gold and not use it for kills or harassment in the lane, but so that he can affect other side lanes. And this is what we expect from the captain and shot caller of Edward Gaming. Xinyi and Gimgoon thinking about setting up a dive in the mid lane, but Scout just hugging his turret.
And so far, this is great. And that's the expectation that you come in with both of these teams. FPX is usually the team that's the first to take the punch, right? They're an impatient team, so when things get too slow, they're usually the ones that make their first mistake down the bottom lane. LWX is usually the one that sees a small opportunity and he goes for a 2v2 when that's not the best case for the compositions. So for the most part, even though he's the first one to die, it was off him trying to play safe. So the intent was there, but if you look back at the VOD after this game, a lot of it's just like, well, maybe next time we'll just have Xinyi come towards the bottom side of the map. Or Cool start placing wards and bottom side river, because they should be having vision control with how well Cool was performing in this lane.
Xinyi, of course, still very new to the FPX roster, so perhaps some communication that the team could still be trying to work through.
Yeah, and that's just natural. Xinyi's been 6 for quite some time, and he haven't made much of an effort to utilize his ulti, and there's a lot of combinations that you can do, especially in the bottom lane. You get your hook shot across, and you can utilize LWX's Q to set up for his ulti. So there are playmaking abilities on this team, but the communication's not there just yet.
We just saw the recall from Xinyi on that bottom side, and look at that. Clearlove almost on cooldown with the Paranoia. Is trying to sneak up. Now, Crisp is level 6 this time. He does have the Wild Growth, which could give a little bit more health to anyone who ends up being dived, but Mako steps up to clear out the ward.
High risk, high reward here, because that's a massive wave crashing into LWX's tower. Now, they can finally get it. That's okay. But once that pushes back into the mid part of the lane, then that's an easy gank. The only thing I was worried about was the possibility of a dive coming in from EDG, but because they didn't have the help of Scout, you already mentioned Crisp having level 6 ulti up, so he would have been able to just repel the dive easily. But with one added member, that's not going to be so easy.
Now Xinyi's also back on this side as well, so we can see EDG trying to take control over the river. They've spotted out this control ward. iBoy and Mako are sitting right there. That's the Crow Storm, and over the wall they go, but there's Xinyi. He's getting burst down. Look at the damage as they are shredding through his health. iBoy looking for the kill, but gets separated from his team as LWX and Shinyi just hug the turret.
So close, but look at Rise. He's coming in just to see if he can come for the collapse. He bounces back just because Cool was responding. So that was super close to get 2 kills off of Shinyi and LWX. Not close enough, no. They didn't get it, but at least they can get a dragon for the trouble.
And something else that I actually just noticed, Ray was channeling teleport during the duration of that out of base. While that dive was happening, Ray had completed his recall, picked up his Black Cleaver, and was sitting and watching the teleport just in case he needed to join the fight. So EDG still a step ahead of that play if they needed it. Instead, Ray teleported top, and EDG just take themselves the dragon.
I think that was just a smart play overall.
Yeah.
Just because had that went into a worst case scenario where Fiddlesticks ulties into an empty bush and FPX is completely safe, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, it seems like a poor use of resources. But A, they would have gotten that ward. That ward is now secured by them to get the control ward. And so they get full control of bottom side with just one use of Fiddlesticks ulti. For them, they're like, okay, that's fine. Like, that's not ideal.
Yeah.
But they got full control of bot side.
I'm learning something about you today. I will trade my Fiddlesticks Crowstorm for one control word.
They were confident that they could get the kills, but just in case, all right? Just in case.
Ray.
Looking
for the dive. He's got flash. He chases it down. Needs a little bit more damage, but the flash back. Ray is brittle. The knockup tags onto him. Gimgoon has no way to close the distance, and they decide not to trade the kills.
Gimgoon played that so perfectly underneath that tower. He was so close to getting the kill onto Ray. You know, it's a little bit frustrating is that Ray can choose to stay in lane with how low or how close he is to Gimgoon's HP, and he has the added benefit of the Ocean Dragon. So Sustain is in his court, but he's just playing it safe because he doesn't know where Shinyi is. We haven't seen him for quite some time.
Yeah, looks like Shinyi hanging out on the bottom half of the map right now. Cool has been spotted. Even Clearlove and Scout on that side of the map to clear out any wards and see just in case Shinyi decides to show up. Clearlove's actually starting the Rift Herald here, and Ray's recall is canceled. They just spotted Shinyi on the bottom half by that Tribush as he stepped up to clear the wards. So not only is that pay clearing out the control ward, the play that we saw earlier, clearing out the control ward, it's also paying off in later vision, and EDG still are capitalizing on that.
That's what I would say is a breath of fresh air when you see EDG play again. Because for the full week, we've been seeing teams like Snake, FPX earlier on as well in the same game. And a lot of the times when they find themselves with a small lead or when they recognize that the enemy junglers in the opposite side of the map, they're never prepared or never in position to find a quick response, be it in Raptor camp or just in topside pressure. This time around, it's almost immediate. So Clearlove getting the Rift Herald for himself, suddenly what can FPX do off of that? They're now suddenly on the defense, just waiting to see where Clearlove will go with that Rift Herald.
And already it's opened up a 1,500 gold advantage for EDG. Despite a bit of a rough early laning phase, things have finally stalled out a little bit more, and we're starting to see them take an advantage. We'll see where Clearlove decides to go. He's got a lot of mobility on which lane he decides to affect with that Paranoia. Plus, there's the follow-up teleport from Scout, and even iBoy if they wanted to try a 4-stack or even a 5-stack.
Yeah, I would say that Clearlove's 2 lanes that he can go towards are mid lane and bottom lane. He's currently stationed mid lane, and that's fair, actually. He's just recognizing the poor base timing for Cool.
They must have just seen the recall, yeah. And Rift Herald is used. Scout's going to start prepping the wave. And Shelly breaks down the mid-tier 1 for first brig. I believe that gold did go to Scout, though Clearlove did get the kill credit for it.
Yeah, 15 minutes into the game, mid lane tower down. Suddenly makes it so much easier to go bottom lane, and that was as easy as it gets in terms of resources, because I was waiting for Clearlove to make a play and then turn it into Rift Herald.
Yeah.
But he turns it into a Rift Herald based off just seeing Cool heading back off the communication, so he still has his ulti for a bottom lane play when Scout clears mid.
And this has always been the EDG playstyle. Give them an inch and they will take a mile as they are starting to open up this game. And FPX, all of that early movement, all of that early rotation that we saw out of Shinyi, out of Cool, suddenly seems to have slowed down, and now it's FPX who seem to be on the back foot.
But this is to be expected, and if I'm looking towards FPX as a team, well, Gimgoon's taking a phenomenal trade. What the heck?
It really is. Ray is trying.
FPX have a stronger scale and composition in team fights with Lulu, Yasuo, Cassiopeia, and Ornn. So it's very clear what they're looking to do, and even if we're looking towards bottom lane being the point of contention, if Cool makes the proper roam, gets there in time, which he's been doing a good job at tracking Scout this time around, then they can challenge EDG's play and make it so much easier to utilize their composition just off of a proper fight for themselves. So FPX knows what the next step is, and they're playing it rather well around Cool to make it work. Look at the control wards coming in from Crisp. So he's been on the ball in this one.
Trying to reclaim control over the bottom river on that side of the map. That said, it's always a scary strategy when your plan is scale into the late game with a Cassiopeia Ornn against the mid-game tempo control team of EDG. There's an inherent step. I want to get to the top of that building. How do you do that? Well, you have to go through Godzilla. And I appreciate the composition. It's actually looking like it's working out for them because they are only just a few thousand gold behind EDG. They're maneuvering around and starting to put EDG a little bit on the back foot on this bottom half of the map, knowing that Infernal Dragon is spawning. But if their strategy really is wait for Cool and Gimgoon to scale up, it seems quite risky against Edward Gaming.
Well, I think the comp itself was really well structured from Coach Ochani. I think Ochani did a great job in making it so that they had early game responses while still getting to the late game goal. So that's why the CS advantages were forming up. And sure, EDG is going to have the level 6 comp ready for themselves, but they're the ones on a timer. They're the ones that have to make it work in this dive or in the next one. They're based around their cooldowns, and if it doesn't work, FPX can and will run away with it. So that's why I think both teams have been playing well to their composition thus far.
Well, the wave is starting to push in, and Clear Love is down here as well. 4 members of Edward Gaming and Teleport ready from Ray. FPX pushed bottom to try and take the tier 1, but it's EDG who just group up and do the exact same play FPX were trying to do, but successfully.
Yeah, and I was looking to see if Cool would be able to respond to that one, but he just wasn't able to. I think strong play from EDG as a whole to just roll through the bottom side, take every control ward, and just force LWX off the tower. So with how clean this game is being played, FPX are going to get more desperate. That's just going to be a thing. Look at how much is being taken by this team.
Yeah, historically that's been the problem for FPX. When they find themselves getting desperate, they take these reckless fights to try and turn the game around. But can you afford to do that against Edward Gaming, who are starting to finish off some items? Blade of the Ruined King done for iBoy. Scout's got his Staff of the Seraphim stacking up.
Let me give you a time limit on this one. I think a time limit when I feel like FPX are going to draw the line.
Okay. Where's that time limit?
Technically there's no time, but it says next dragon is going to be Infernal. So there we go. That's a bit of a cheat.
That's the one. No, that's good. That's like 5-6 minutes.
There we go. So double Infernal for me is just going to be a point where FPX are going to draw the line at that point. It's going to be at the same time when LWX will have at least an extra BF sword to his name, and when Cool will have, I would say, finished up his stacking of his tier. So if you get yourself a stacked Seraph, you can look to contest that. I think that's good enough for FPX to at least try and challenge EDG's composition. Because the major fear is the fact that they are mid-range. They're fairly low in range, while Cool can kite that back.
Now we see the lane swap out of Edward Gaming. They're looking for the top tier 1. FPX seem to have predicted the play, sending 3 bottom to trade a 1-for-1, perhaps even a 1-for-2. Ray is going to try and hold the fort, but there's no one to defend with him. Like you said, though, he is up against 3 mid-range champions.
I think FPX are in a good position. Remember, Gimgoon has Ornn ulti, so if EDG decide to continue to push forward, strong enough base damage to clear the next wave. So FPX gets themselves a tower, and even though it's answered thoroughly, they're going to be able to get to the next objective faster just because they're basing right now.
Once again, give EDG an inch and they will take a mile. It's the 1-for-1 trade, but Highboy gets to finish off a significantly larger number of the Krugs than Shinyi, even level 12 to level 11. But he's actually been spotted out here, and now they're turning towards the Baron. Edward Gaming are just turning onto it. Even the paranoia to deny vision from Clear Love. Maybe he's trying to think that FPX are about to be ganked, just denying that global presence. Gimgoon drops the Ornhorn. There's the realm where Baron picked up, and EDG are out of there. The forced engage onto Clear Love from Shinyi, but he's sitting inside of the ultimatum. The single sacrifice. This is absolutely a trade EDG will take.
That's ridiculous. I expected EDG to base off that. But they said that we recognize FPX are going to be...
Oh boy, you should have seen the ward coming, man! Not paying attention, perhaps window shopping. You can see he cracks the knuckles. Bit of a mistake as he gives over that kill. Suddenly, this trade might not be quite so worth it as FPX break down the tier 1.
Nah, this is FPX trying to take as much as they can before EDG get back onto the map. So this is really cool just to talk about that play coming through. Unless if EDG want to do this.
Rosestorm, the chase, Scout and Mako catch up. And they find the kill onto LWX. Plus there's more bouncing. Cool trying to flash away. Another one from Crisp in order to escape Mako. Gets the Terrafly. Darkwind is going to start bouncing. Look at the damage. It's not enough. Raise Apprehend will finish off Crisp.
And proper response. EDG's on the map too, so they should be able to take an inhibitor off that. That's going to be how long this takes. So we'll see if there's any response from Shinyi to make a play, but he doesn't have a partner in crime. Cool is way too damn low.
Yeah, he literally had to turn tail and run there as EDG break down the mid-tier 2. Cool is still on the fountain. There's no Call of the Forge God from Gimgoon to try and clear out these minions and teleport from iBoy to get onto the inhibitor turret and break it down. FPX take 1 turret, EDG take 2 and the inhibitor. Oh, they might not be able to finish it off. FPX, this is the chaos we were talking about. The fight breaks out. iBoy kiting around the side. Great knockup, but look at the damage that they're doing. LWX dives into the back, but 3, now 4, nearly 5 have already died, plus the calling onto Crisp as he runs to the fountain. This could actually be game res.
Yep, that's what happens if you keep taking fights when you don't have the members to back you up. So EDG, 2 fights, and they take the win.
Turning onto the first Nexus turret and the second and the Nexus. Edward Gaming, in game 1 of their return to the LPL in summer, take the win against FPX.
Well, that happened way too quickly. What the hell was that? All right. So let's just
calm down there, Matthew McConaughey.
Okay, you know what? Clearlove is like, did they really take these 2 fights for us to get the game like that?
End the game. Oh my goodness. I mean, I was kind of joking a little bit about it earlier, saying, you know, that one team fight is so important. When you get that first 5v5 and everyone's all stacked up, it can turn the tide of the game. It actually ended the game.
And it was just one small error that we had seen, because FPX, it started with an FPX advantage.
Yeah.
They feel like they got the tower and proper tempo based off that push. They come back onto the map, and EDG say, yeah, we're actually just not basing. We're not taking that step. We're literally taking Baron.
Who does that? Yeah.
And they were able to do it because they had Scout with his ulti, with his Realm Warp. So they got most of the members out of there with the Baron.
Yeah.
And the issue with that was that FPX are saying, okay, what can we get off this? Because they're going to have to base, they have stragglers. They got 1 straggler. They thought they could get an extra tower.
Yep.
That extra bit of greed paid off in the end for EDG because Mako flies in with the ulti.
Yeah.
So it's just teams trying to fight back for tempo, and it's EDG that come out ahead.
Absolutely. Coming out swinging in that game 1 as they just smash apart FPX. I mean, it was a great attempt from FPX to try and lash out real quick before they would have to sit back and go on the defensive. They've got the Yasuo with the wind wall. They've got that Cassiopeia for clearing out minions. The defense wouldn't be too terribly difficult from them, but they just did not get a chance to because EDG just ran them down.
When you face top teams, one thing you have to start to learn is when you cut your losses, that trades are going to happen at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And if you lose Baron like that, I think going for iBoy was great. I think that was a great idea. That was very creative. But then pushing forward for the extra tower, remember, people had quickly based off of Realm Warp as well. So then that's the line. That's where you draw the line and say that we actually should cut our losses and look to defend the Baron coming at us. It didn't happen, and that's where it kind of lost for them.
Yeah, bit of a tragedy for FPX. We'll see if they can recover. We'll hear from our analyst to break down that Game 1 EDG win.
Thank you, Mr. Dom. And while that was an explosive ending, I want to take it back to the start and talk about the draft actually coming out from FPX. Now, Clement, you and I were actually pretty unanimous on FPX having the superior draft here.
Definitely, if you play it out into the late game, it's actually incredibly hard for the short-range damage dealers for EDG to do anything. You have to run into a Cassiopeia, you have to run into an Ornn, and most importantly, we felt like FPX also had the early game control with the counter pick on Cool on his Cassiopeia against the Rise and a more explosive combo, pre-6 combo with the Camille as well. So this should have been a very set and steady game plan from FPX. You control the scuttles, you win the pre-6 early games, and then you go into big 5v5s where you have the advantage.
Now, what actually happened in theory is not what happened in practice when we actually look at the game itself. And Clement, we were actually looking towards the mid lane. It's actually pretty difficult to replay this because it was lots of small micro mistakes actually coming out of FPX, which gave information to EDG and eventually led to their downfall.
Yeah, the big thing here is if you look at the CS scores, Scout was never really far behind, and he actually lost his first flash on the first gank. Now, why did that happen? What happened was Shingy and then Cool did not push the wave back in together. In fact, Clearlove got both Flash and the Cleanse away from Cassiopeia, and what we saw on the map was incredibly intelligent. Scout managed to freeze the wave on his side of the river.
He brought it down.
Yeah, he brought it down. He took 150 damage, but he managed to freeze the wave very close to his tower. And what this happened is it set off an entire chain reaction of events. Cool had to walk up past river, and he signaled super hard where Camille was on the map. He had to flank to the bottom side. And once we saw that, the wave was actually kind of destroyed in the top lane. Gimgoo no longer had a safe passage because his jungle was in all essence shown on the map. He had to roam from his map, had nothing to do, expend a teleport to go back into the top lane, and from all this time, Clearlove was farming up a storm on FPX's own side of the jungle. So that one small mistake, that one greed where Shingy and Cool did not push the wave in together after getting a successful gank, actually snowballed the entire early game towards EDG. And EDG's mid lane was able to move first, they were able to take Herald first, and they were able to take bot lane first, giving them that mid-game tempo that they wanted so bad. So when you're going up against EDG, those small mistakes are going to cost you incredibly hard.
Exactly, and even from what we saw from Ray, because I know the execution was a little bit sloppy coming out from it in the top lane, but the call was clear. Yeah. Go in on top lane, burn the Ornn ultimate, go down to the Herald, take mid, take bot, take everything away from FPX, and while the rest of the game was actually pretty short from there on, the stage was set.
And this is the thing about EDG and what has kept them competitive through all of these splits. A lot of what they do is not based on mechanical skill. It's not about execution. It's about setting your priorities right and working your trades into the structure of what you want to do in the game. My definition of tempo is setting the correct priorities for what you want to do in a correct sequence. And this is what EDG are so good at. This is why we call them the tempo team, the shot call team of the LPL, because all the trades they do, all the micro stuff they do is in relation to the macro stuff. And if you just give them an inch, they'll take a mile.
Exactly. And it's talking about that tempo and talking about momentum, it's definitely a resource that you can cash in. And that is something that EDG did in this game. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Baron fight right here, because this is where they cashed it all in. You were talking about them and the team fight setup. This is the fruits of their effort.
Yeah, definitely. The Baron team fight had already happened, and what was really smart about that is that they used the 6-second paranoia, the buff on Nocturne, to secure the Baron first, of course. And this is where FPX do go a little bit too far. They do get the good catch onto the Lucian here. A little bit of mistake from iBoy. Want to defend his tower, and you know, afterward, just like the casters were saying, they made a massive tempo mistake. You also have to account for the reset time that the other team is throwing at you, and that led to a pre-23-minute game end, which is incredibly fast.
Yeah, I mean, it was one push and win, essentially. Yeah. It was a mistake from FPX being punished, and then punished again within the base at the inhibitor, and it was the final fight, and it was all done. I mean, honestly, great punish coming out of EDG to recognize they could go in on this, but still, FPX, why?
Yeah, this is their only, their last shot. They're kind of down a member already, and when they go in, you can see the ultimate Yasuo was a bit slow. It wasn't followed up by anything, so a bit of you know, disconnect right there. I think a lot of it actually does have to do with the paranoia and how powerful it can be in the team fights. But at this point, it was, you know, they were on their last ropes. It was kind of a final ditch effort to save their base, and with that crumbling down, the game just went away.
It definitely was a last-ditch attempt coming out there for sure. I feel like a lot of this, though, was coming off of the vision coming out of like the mid lane, because we were talking about the fact that we had to see the mid lane feint towards the bottom side, which gave up the Camille's position. Yeah. Whether those wards came out of what came out of Mako, and Mako will actually take our MVP for this game as well. And I do feel like a lot of this does come off the shot calling, and also Mako gonna be the guy at the helm for a lot of those plays.
The coolest thing about a lot of those plays is you could actually read EDG's pings on the map and tell what they were thinking about. When they froze that wave against the Cassiopeia, they were pinging on him, and they also pinged where Camille might be. So you can definitely tell how smart these people are on the map. And Fiddlesticks, I think it really does fit Mako and EDG's style. You jump out of somewhere, you have the correct setup, he's going to reward you handsomely.
Exactly, and this was based off of the macro plays and the decisions they made in the rest of the game. Because looking at that laning phase, and I was sat with you, Clement, you were like, Why is this Lucian and Fiddlesticks lane losing against Yasuo Lulu? What's happening here? Because in theory, the Fiddlesticks is a good pick into melee matchups because you get the extended range on Fear. Into melee matchups, you can't get anywhere near them. At the same time, in a minion wave, if you fear your target, drain them, pop the bird on them, it's going to fly to them 3 times and you completely wreck them. So in theory, seems like a good matchup. They end up losing it, but it's more about those the mistakes that they can punish later on with the momentum from those macro plays.
Yeah, if you want to take down EDG, the bottom lane is you have to survive till late game, or you need to punish them super hard in lane, which is what IG and Rogue Warriors have been able to do in the past.
Yeah, needs more momentum coming out of them. I just want to see Gimgoon play a carry in the top lane. So I want Clement. Maybe we'll get it. We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll see if that is actually going to happen.
想要征服他人，必先战胜自己。EDG 的队名就是鞭策我们的动力。